My name is Father Neil Wack. I am in my second year as the Director of Vocations for the United States Province of Priests and Brothers in the Congregation of Holy Cross, which is a really long title, I know. So my current work is helping mostly young men, but some young women, to discern God's call, to figure out where it is that God's calling them. Sometimes it's to married life or single life, or, God willing, the consecrated life or priesthood. I'm from South Bend, Indiana, so just a couple miles away from Notre Dame, and youngest of 10 kids. I went to Purdue University as an undergraduate and started in electrical engineering and then went on to computer science from there, and graduated there in 1993, way a long time ago, in computer science, and then worked for 4 years in Indianapolis as a computer consultant before entering the seminary in 1997. Yeah, so I went to Purdue University starting in electrical engineering, and I thought that's where I was going to end up, but engineering, that particular discipline, wasn't quite where God was calling me, it turns out. I found that out early on my sophomore year. I got a 21% on my first test, and the professor said that his 10-year-old daughter could have gotten a 30% at least on it. So that's when I switched to computer science. So it took me 5 years to go through Purdue. It's a state school like here in Indiana, but a very, very good school for engineering. So turned out to be somewhat providential that I went there because their school colors are black and gold, so matches my outfits nicely. And my namesake, Neil Armstrong, went to school there at Purdue as well. Yeah, I think it was in high school, the idea of mathematics and computers kind of meshing together, that really piqued my interest, and it just became a pretty clear path for me early on. I guess maybe in grade school I thought I was going to be a truck driver or something else, but and my dad is a family physician, so I thought I might do that. But just as I got into high school and more with calculus and different programming languages and such, it just seemed like this was where I was supposed to be. So, and I had a couple of brothers that were in engineering as well. So that helped me along that path. And then just from there, it just kind of rode the wave, basically. Yeah, I think why I ended up in computer science is that there's a logic to it. You know, if you put the right commands in the right sequence, you're going to get the right answer. And for me, that was great because I like to think anyway, I have a very logical mind. And so for me, it was very helpful to go into something that I knew, all right, I don't have to have this kind of abstract thinking. I can just go with these solid points and there's going to be an answer, which made it pretty interesting to go into philosophy and theology later on, but quite a different situation for those. So once I finished with school, I ended up in a consulting company in Indianapolis, which was ideal because I was able to work for a number of different clients at the same time, doing a lot of programming, some systems design, and some troubleshooting, but mostly just that solid programming. So strangely, I enjoyed being by myself with a big stack of music and working for 10 hours a day. But I was working with other people that I really enjoyed being with, and we would end up spending our evenings together most times too. So I worked for insurance companies, the state government for a little bit, other places like that do research and needed, what do they call that? It was workflow. So it was taking documents, research documents that had to be scanned, and then figuring out ways that those could be tracked to different desks. Which back in the day was a lot different than it is now, but yeah, workflow, that's what it was called, yeah. So that's pretty much what I did for those 4 years, just in various places, mostly in Indianapolis. I had one client in Chicago that I would go up there for. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Work at 60 or 70 hours a week, but just really loved it. So I'm the youngest of 10 kids. And I grew up in a family that family prayer was a huge part of our upbringing. There was no question that we were going to pray every day. even if that meant that we were outside playing and having a good time, and my mother would show up at the door and she'd just yell out, "Rosary." And that meant that everyone had to come in and pray the rosary. And so that was kind of a great start for me, a little foundation. And then going through high school, just kind of continuing with the faith and continuing to be involved in the parish. It was just 2 blocks away, so it was really easy for me. And then once I was in college, my brother Bill was actually finishing up in the seminary. And so he was ordained right around the time I finished at Purdue, finished my undergraduate. And that just kind of something kind of planted in my brain at that point. But I'm a slow learner, so it took me 4 years from there to really figure out, all right, I'm supposed to go into the seminary. But even within those 4 years, it was neat because there are elements of the faith that I was able to use in my work. There were people that just needed more than just computer work, as it turns out. You end up going to someone's workstation and sitting with them and talking, and you find out a lot about their faith when their computer fails. It's kind of surprising, but so I was able to kind of start using those skills even early on. So I finished up in, when was it? It was probably in June or so, and then I had a month or so before I had to actually enter the seminary. And the first year of seminary formation, at least for the Congregation of Holy Cross, but I think for most, it involves a lot of philosophy. And so it was a tough transition to go from computer science to philosophy, and I just had to talk to a lot of professors and say, look, I don't know whether it's left brain or right brain, but I have the wrong brain for this study. And so they were very good. They were willing to work with me and give me some parallels to say, all right, this isn't so different from what you might think of with programming or with this. So I had really smart professors that could make those connections and give me at least an entree into this study. So it still was a battle, and I think I'm one of the poster children for seminarians who don't think they can make it through the seminary. They say, oh, you know this guy Neil? Yeah, well, he made it, so you can probably make it too. Kind of in a practical way, I think that previous work that I did plays a part now. When I was pastor of a parish and there wasn't an IT department, there wasn't really anyone to take care of the computers or the printers or the networks down or anything like that, that was a very practical way that I was able to use my education and my work experience to help. And I think just in some of the ways that we can see, I think the databases and the ways we manipulate data in the working world, you need to do that in ministry. You need to do that in parishes, and it can seem too secular, but it actually does help the mission. And so giving tools to do those things, to make reports, to have, all right, these parishioners are doing this is going on here, or what I'm doing now in vocations to find out, all right, just enter a region and be able to tell me who's interested in that region and things like that. So definitely still using those skills, more for data manipulation now, I think. I think it did, kind of tangentially. Yeah, my faith was important. As I tried to live it, I try to tell people about it. You know, this idea of, maybe I didn't go to someone's workstation and hand them a Bible and talk about Scripture, but hopefully in my conversation with them, they experienced somewhat of what I was trying to live in that Christian life. And so whether it was explicit or implicit, I'd like to think the faith played a part in it. If nothing else, it kept them calm because they were very worried about their computer going down. One woman was so nervous. I said, we're going to work on this. And she said, I can't take this. I got to go. I'm going to go get some chocolate. I said, all right, well, it's not quite a faith sort of thing, but we'll talk when you come back. But I think just that aspect of trying to show them Christ in little ways, just by being patient, by being kind, by staying when many other people would have gotten really frustrated. Trying to live the faith that I think we're all called to live, no matter where our workplace is. I'd say first and foremost, you've got to pray. That's always the answer. Make sure that you have a daily prayer life. And that's, even if you are working 60, 70 hours a week, there still is always time to talk to God and to listen to Him, maybe more importantly. So to make sure there's that daily prayer life, to make sure you're involved in your parish or in your worship community, wherever that might be. And then also to kind of dip your toe in the water, and maybe volunteer a little bit, help out at the local school or the local parish or the local soup kitchen. Those different ways that really are kind of universal. It's not necessarily just for engineers, but it's for anyone that wants to deepen their relationship with God and in a way come to know Him better in their lives and be able to figure out, all right, what's my call from here? I think engineers can do that in a particular way just by the way they approach their work, and the way the different projects that they can take on or not take on, and certainly that plays into the morality and the ethics of the situation too. Some of those same answers, to definitely take time to pray, but talk to people too. Sometimes what I've found in my experience is that people think that this is a crazy idea. Well, God might be calling me to be a religious sister or brother or priest, but no, that's a crazy idea. No one else could possibly think that, And so they let it go and they bury it away. But if that kind of comes up, to just have the courage to ask someone and say, this strange idea came up in a prayer that I had. What do you think? And that the answers are usually very telling. If someone says, yeah, that is a crazy idea, we don't see you doing that at all, it's probably worth thinking about. But if they say, yeah, we see that in you, and that could definitely be something for you, that may just get them that one step further down the road. Again, thinking very logically and thinking of the computer programs and all the different things you do, if then else, those sorts of things. So you're thinking, all right, well, if this happens, then this, then this. And so you always do one step ahead, even if they're, well, I don't know how techy we want to get, but if you embed these if then else's, right, you still have the big one, right, which is, if I'm called to be a priest and all this other stuff happens, then I'm going to be a priest, or then I'm going to be a religious sister or brother. But within those, there's a lot of other steps. There's subroutines or functions or what have you, which I can't believe this is all coming back to me. But all those are individual steps that can lead you to where you're supposed to be, which may or may not be in the religious life. It may be to be married. It may be to be single. But I guess my main piece of advice would be, don't look too far ahead. And that's so tempting for us to say, all right, I need to have this all figured out. When really God always says, just what's the next step? Let's work on the next step together, And I think with that, it just gets you a little bit further down the road, a little bit further. And then you go from talking to friends and family to talking to vocation directors to maybe doing a come and see kind of week or weekend. And then seeing, all right, is that comfortable? Or no, I need to go and look at this other thing. If then else, I'm going to go look at something else. But within all those things, there's these many opportunities to let God do the work. But we just have to keep our hearts open to it and not try to fast forward the process. So what I guess I always tell people is what I really believe, and maybe people don't hear that too much from religious types, but I love being a priest. I love being in the congregation of Holy Cross. I love this whole concept of giving your life to the Lord and letting Him work with what we have. What He's given to us, we give freely back to Him. Don't need to be a priest, a brother, or sister to do that, but you need to do it so that you can be the best married, single person, any other vocation that you might be. And once you do that, and do that freely and fully, the rewards are exponentially greater than what you put into it.